Hilchos Matnos Aniyim Perek Shmini, the laws of gifts to the poor, chapter 8. Today we continue the laws of tzedakah. Specifically, we're going to be discussing two major topics. Number one, the legal power of a pledge made to tzedakah, an advance pledge, a commitment to give tzedakah. And the second big topic is that of pidyon shvuyim, redeeming captives. The great mitzvah that when a Jew is taken captive by a Gentile who wishes him harm, we go to any lengths, and we'll see just to how great of lengths in this chapter to make sure that they are redeemed. And while it's unfortunate, today we are living through a current time of pidyon shvuyim, when we have hostages, our holy brothers and sisters from the land of Israel, in the hands of captors. And when the opportunity arises to redeem them, to release them in the ways that are guided by halacha, we should certainly take the opportunity. And from far, we're not part of the army, we don't do the physical element of that, but at least spiritually speaking, we can offer extra prayers, do extra mitzvahs in the merit of these shvuyim, that they should come home speedily and safely to their families and loved ones. With that, let's begin the chapter. Says the Rambam, halacha aleph, hatzdaka, harehi bichlal hanadarim. You should know that tzedakah, giving charity, is included in the category of vows. That means a commitment to tzedakah is like making a vow. We had a whole section of laws on vows. We know how stringent that is and how much you have to keep your vow. Tzedakah is the same thing. Lefichach, therefore, ha'omer harei olai sela litzedakah. If somebody pledges, like in the picture, I pledge to give a silver coin to tzedakah, or harei sela zu tzedakah, or he points to a specific coin and he says, this coin is tzedakah. Chayav litna la'aniyim miyad. Like a vow, you have to fulfill it right away. And you must give that coin to the poor people immediately. V'im echar, if you delayed, avar beval ta'acher, you transgressed the Torah's commandment of not delaying the fulfillment of vows. Shari biyad delitin miyad, v'aniyim mitzuyin, because it's in your hands to give it right away, and there are always poor people around. So there's no excuse for you not to fulfill your vow right away. Ein shamaniyim, if it happens to be that in the place where you are, there are no poor people at hand, mafrish umeniach hachiyim tzaniyim, at least put it aside, at least do the act that you can. Put it away, leave it there till you'll find poor people. If the stipulation that you made when you uttered the vow was that I want to donate this coin to tzedakah, but I'm only going to give it away when I find the poor person, then you don't even have to put it aside at the time of the vow. You can put it aside and separate it when you find the poor person to whom your gift is intended. Similarly, if you made a stipulation when you declared the vow or the donation to tzedakah, the two terms here, nadar or hisnadev, we have multiple times in the laws of vows and the laws of sacrifices. Nadar is taking a vow upon yourself. I take upon myself to do X, Y, and Z, to give this coin to tzedakah. Nadav, hisnadev, the donations when you declare the object itself as part of the vow. This coin, like in the Rambam says in the beginning, two cases, I take upon myself a selah, or this selah is tzedakah, that's nadar or hisnadev. The point is, if when you declared this vow, this obligation, you stipulated, shayiu hagabayim rashayin l'shaneiso l'tzarfa b'zav, as the tzedakah collectors, and we'll learn more about them tomorrow, all the laws that relate to the tzedakah collectors. You want them to be allowed to exchange the coin which you give to larger golden coins. Harei elu mutarin, that's allowed. Which sounds like otherwise it's not, because the vow was that this coin should be given to tzedakah. So as long as you don't make a verbal stipulation which allows the collectors to then exchange it for larger change, they wouldn't be allowed to, because there's an element of legal holiness that is on this coin, and this coin has to be used in fulfillment of the mitzvah. You made the stipulation, then you're good. Halacha beis, here's another law that relates to tzedakah like it relates to all vows. Hamatfis b'tzedakah, chayav kishar nadarim. If you attach something to an object of tzedakah, you're liable or you're obligated to make that second object also tzedakah, like any other vow. Ketzad. What does this mean? What does it mean to attach? Amar harei sela zu kazu. You're holding a coin of tzedakah in your hand. Okay, this is the coin of tzedakah. I'll call this a silver coin of tzedakah. And then you're holding a gold coin and you say, this coin is going to be like that coin. Harei zu tzedakah. So the coin, the second coin, also is considered to be tzedakah. If a person separates a coin to begin with at the outset and he says this is going to be tzedakah, then he takes second coin and he says and this. Even though you didn't specify, and this what's going to be with the second coin? Since you just said about the first coin that it's going to be tzedakah, the intention is clear. You want to attach the second coin to the first and make them both tzedakah. Halacha gimel haneder tzedakah v'li'ada kama nadar. If a person pledged or vowed to give tzedakah, but he doesn't remember, he doesn't know how much he pledged. Yitain, he should keep giving ad sheyoymar lo lekach niskavanti, till he gets to a point where he says, that much I know I didn't mean. So you got to keep on giving until you reach that red line that you know you wouldn't cross. Halacha dalid echad ha'omer sela zu tzedakah oy ha'omer harei alai sela litzedakah v'hifrisha. The following law that we're about to say applies both in the scenario where a person declared this coin is tzedakah, or he took the vow upon himself, I take upon myself to give a coin to tzedakah, and he put it aside. The point is there's a coin right now that has the status of tzedakah on it, either because it was designated or because it was pledged and then actually set aside. What's the law that we want to say in both of these scenarios? If the person then wishes to exchange the coin for another similar coin, it's allowed. It doesn't become inherently holy. But the moment it reaches the hand of the collector of the tzedakah, he can no longer change it. There's always a suspicion. If you take small change and change it into other coins, maybe you're profiting, maybe you're taking a better quality coin. The collectors were held to the highest standard. They had to be the most clean, with no suspicion at all. So the coin that's given to them, that's the coin they must pass on to the poor. Even if the collectors wanted to take all the small change and convert it into larger coins, they're not allowed. So if there's no poor people to give it out to distribute the funds at the moment, they can have others, this is how the commentators explain it, they can have others do the exchange, but not for themselves. Anytime there's any cloud of suspicion, we take it away from the collectors and we make sure that it's done by other people where they don't have that suspicion. Halacha hey, what if there's a case where the poor people actually prefer, they have benefit from the fact that the funds stay in the collector's hands for longer? For example, they could use that as an incentive to force others to give. You know, when you have like an empty tzedakah box, it's not so inviting. But when you see a full one, you're like, oh, people are giving. Maybe I'll give to this cause as well. Or other commentaries approach it from the perspective of the collectors themselves. So long as they're not holding any funds, they're not really motivated to get others to give. But if they're holding funds, they'll be motivated to keep on getting others to give and add to the collection. Point is, the poor people actually prefer that the collectors have the money. In this case, says the Rambam, the collector, who's going to have to hold on to the funds for as long as it takes to get the full amount that he wants, can actually borrow the money for himself, for his own use personally, and then pay it back. Tzedakah isn't fully like inherent consecrated items where you can't have any benefit from it. In certain scenarios, if it's clear that it will actually bring a benefit to the poor people, you can hold on to it and then do whatever you need to do with the money in the meantime. Halacha vav, misha hisnadev menorah einer lebeis hakneses. If somebody donates a candelabra, a large lamp or a regular lamp, to a shul, asur l'shanoisa, you cannot change that object; it must remain in the shul always. Ve'im lidvar mitzvah, except if there's an opportunity that arises that this object can be used to do a mitzvah, then mutar l'shanoisa, you can change it. In other words, you can remove it. Afal pisha le nishtaka shem be'aleha me'aleha, even though the name of the owner never sunk from the object. In other words, it's always still being associated with him. People say, Zu hamenoida einer shel pleni, that's the candelabra, that's the lamp donated by Mr. X. Still, for a mitzvah, you can use it. If the name of the owner was sunk from it, in other words, nobody remembers that this lamp was donated by this specific guy, you can change it even for optional matters, things that are not related to mitzvah. We actually had it over here. There was a certain member of our community who donated a menorah, a very interesting shaped Hanukkah menorah, and for years it was not used for anything else other than that because it had to be, he donated the object to the shul. Then there was an opportunity for it to be used in some other type of mitzvah thing, and so we got rid of it. But this halacha is still enforced today. And you have this all the time. People make donations, they have a plaque up, right? And certain pieces of furniture are linked to them. it's a big deal. You don't just change furniture in a shul. You don't just change things that were donated in a shul. Halacha zayin b'med dvarim amurim b'shehaya hamisnadev Yisrael. When do we say this? When the donor was a Jew. Avalim haya oived kechavim umazalis. But if the donor was a non-Jew, idol-worshipping Gentile, where do you think we're going? You would think we're going to go more lenient. Says the Rambam, no. Asr l'shanoisa afilu lidvar mitzvah ad sheyishtaka Hashem ba'aleha me'aleha. You cannot change it, even for a mitzvah opportunity, unless the name of the donor has sunk from it. In other words, nobody no longer associates this object with this guy. Because if the Gentile will hear about this, he might say to himself, Hikdashti davar lebeis haknesses shel Yehudim umachru la'atzmon. Look what happened. I donated something to a Jewish synagogue, and they told it for themselves. They're making profit off of me. We don't want that to happen. So if a non-Jew donates something to a shul, it's even stricter than when a Jew does. Halacha ches oived kechavim umazalis sheisnadiv lebedek habayis. We had this law before in the last book of the Rambam. If an idol-worshipping Gentile makes a donation to the temple upkeep maintenance fund, initially, we don't take it from him. But if we take it from him, we don't return it. In other words, we'll take it all the way. If it's not money, it was a specific object like a beam or a stone, we always give it back. We want nothing specific in the Holy Temple to be attached to a non-Jewish name. Shenemar, as Ezra said, when the Jews came back from Babylon to build the second temple, there was an offer from some non-Jews to help. And Ezra made it clear, it's not for you and for us to build the temple together. This is a Jewish project. That's all for the Holy Temple, however. But for a shul, we actually accept it from them initially. No problem, donations are accepted. As long as the guy says, I'm separating or I'm donating this object to be used in accordance with the intent of the Jewish people. If he didn't say that, tone geniza. It needs to be buried, intoned. Because maybe he had in mind to consecrate it to Hashem. And if it's consecrated to Hashem, we cannot use it. While we do take donations for shuls, we don't take donations from non-Jews to keep up the wall of Jerusalem, nor the water channel which flows through it. Shenemar, as it says, V'lachem ein chelek v'zikaron b'Yerushalayim. To the Gentiles, we don't want there should be any specific portion, any specific remembrance in Jerusalem. Again, it's a Jewish city, a Jewish project, and only Jews should be involved in funding it. It's forbidden for a Jew to take tzedakah from an idol-worshipping Gentile publicly. But if he cannot live with the tzedakah being provided by other Jews, and there's no way to take it in private, secretly, from the Gentile. Gentile wants it to be famous. In that specific circumstance, it's allowed. If there's a king or a minister, a high-ranking minister from among the Gentiles, that sends some money to a Jew as tzedakah, we don't return it to keep the peace with the government. We take it from him, but we make sure secretly to pass it off to another non-Jew, in a way where the king won't hear about it. The non-Jewish money is funneled to other non-Jews. We don't want it to be supporting Jews if we don't have to. Halacha Yud, now we segue to the second topic of the chapter. Pidyon Shvuyim, redeeming captives. Koidem leparnasas aniyim v'liksusan, comes before, takes precedence over supporting and clothing poor people. Ve'ein lecha mitzvah gedayla kepidyon Shvuyim. There is no greater mitzvah than the redeeming of captives. Shahashavui, harehu bichlal hare'evim v'hatzmeim v'ha'arumim v'oim b'sakanas nefashis. The captive is the poorest of them all. He's a hungry person, he's a thirsty person, he's a naked person, and he's standing in danger of his life. If somebody closes his eye and doesn't redeem the captives, he transgresses multiple prohibitions. The prohibition of closing your heart, the prohibition of closing your hand, the prohibition of standing by the blood of your fellow, the prohibition of not allowing a Gentile to work back-breaking labor with a Jewish brother. And you've canceled the fulfillment of the commandment, open up your hands to help another Jew. And the mitzvah of having your brother live with you. Loving a fellow Jew as yourself. And what it says to save those that are being taken to death. And many of these similar verses. There's tons of prohibitions that are involved with you if you have the capacity and you purposely take a step back. If you're able to redeem captives and you don't, it's very extreme. The Ein Lecha Mitzvah Rabba Kapidyon Shvuyim that Rambam repeats, there's no greater mitzvah like the redeeming of captives. Yud Aleph, Anshi Ha'ir Shegavu Mois, Libinyan Beis HaKnesses. If people in a city collected funds to build a shul, they had a building campaign, they didn't start the actual project, they got the money. Ubalahen Dvar Mitzvah, and another mitzvah opportunity came their way, Moitziin Bei HaMois. They're able to spend the money on the other mitzvah, even though it was collected for a building. But since it hasn't actually been started, they can use the money for other mitzvah things. Kanu avanim dekairis. But once they bought stones and beams, so now you'd think the shul is kind of getting under construction. Lo yimkerum lidvar mitzvah. Indeed, now they can no longer sell those stones and beams to any other mitzvah opportunities. Has to be used for the shul with one exception. Ella lepidyon shvuyim. Only for redeeming captives. Redeeming captives will take precedence over that. Goes even more. They brought the stones to the building site. They already began to line them. They brought the beams and they shaped them down. And they have everything ready to go for building. We can sell it all, only for redeeming captives. Once you built the shul and you finished, then we don't sell the shul. We make another collection campaign for funds for redeeming the captives. But the point is, while you're building the shul, the materials can actually go, rather than to the shul, to redeeming the captives. Halacha Yud Beis, there's one exception, one caveat. Ein poidin es hashvuyim b'yasar al demein. We do not redeem captives for more than their worth. There's a way you can assess their worth. Obviously, we're not talking about the human inherently is priceless. The point is, if the ransom that's being asked by the non-Jews is actually going to, if we pay it, it's going to incentivize further kidnapping, then we don't cave to that. To fix the world. We don't want the enemies chasing us to take us captive, because that's going to lead to further problems. We also don't make escapades in which we rescue the captives in a sneaky way if we know that it could lead to worse results for the others, because of the fixing the world. This might cause the enemies to weigh down, double down, heavy their yoke, make their yoke heavier, and guard them much more exceedingly. So we don't want to cause those situations. Of course, if we know that we're going to be able to free all the hostages and in a way that's going to leave fear on the enemies, not the opposite, then of course we should. And Israel has done this in the past, in our own times, with Entebbe and such operations. Even now, with October 7th, some of the hostages were actually freed via rescue operations, and those are of course totally in line with halacha, unless we know for sure that it's going to lead to what the Rambam is saying, this suspicion. A person purposely sold himself or his kids to the Gentiles. He couldn't pay back a loan or whatever it is, caused them to do this. Or he borrowed something from the Goyim, and the Goyim put them in captivity or locked them up. How many proverbial mashke stories do we have with the parrots? Right? The guy couldn't pay his rent, and he locked them up. Round 1, round 2, it's a mitzvah to redeem them. And if it goes 3 times, this is the Jew's irresponsibility. Of course, if we can label it as such. If we know that it's not, it's a different thing. But if the father dies in captivity, we will redeem the sons. But if the reason the guy is taking them is not just to pay back the loan, but to kill him, we keep redeeming even multiple times. If there was a Jewish slave that was captured, since before becoming the Jewish slave, he had gone to mikvah with the intent of becoming a slave, at which point he accepts upon himself some of the mitzvahs of the Jewish people. We redeem him, treat him the same way as a Jew who was captured. If a captive, a hostage, in captivity, changed his religion to idol worship, even in one mitzvah, even in the respect of one mitzvah, he began to eat non-kosher. Not because he had to, obviously. To spite God, it's very hard to find such apostates nowadays. The Friedrich Rebbe, previous Lubavitch Rebbe, would often say that people are not apikursin. They're just amei ha'aretz. They're not, today there's no apostates, there's just ignoramuses. It's very hard to be a halachic apikaitis. But the point is, if somebody in captivity began to become a spiteful rebel against the Jewish people, then indeed it's forbidden to redeem him. Tesvav ha'isha kaidames leish. Women come before men. When it comes to feeding, clothing, and redeeming from captivity. A man is more prone to going collecting tzedakah around people's doors. Not the women, it's much more embarrassing for her. But if both a man and a woman were in captivity, and they're both being demanded by their captors to engage in a forbidden relationship with them, then fascinatingly, the man gets precedence to be redeemed, because that isn't his normal way. Women with men, that's a typical relationship, even though it's in this case a very tragic one. But the man is going to have to suffer an unnatural relationship, so he comes first. If there's an opportunity to redeem, the man is redeemed first. If there's an orphan and a girl orphan, a male orphan and a female orphan, who are coming to be married off, we marry off the woman before the man. Because the woman's embarrassment is greater the longer she stays unmarried. And we should give her no less than 6.25 silver coins, pure silver coins. If there's more money in the communal funds, we give her more, as befits her honor. If we had many poor people or many hostages to redeem, there's not enough money in the funds to feed them all, clothe them all, or redeem them all. Makdimin, Torah has an order of precedence. And the order of precedence, the Rambam gives us 10 categories of Jews over here in the following order. Makdimin es ha-kohen la-Levi. Kohen comes the first. He's the holiest, comes first before the Levi. The Levi li-Yisrael. The Levi comes before a regular Israelite, regular Jew. The Yisrael le-Chalal. A Yisrael comes before a Chalal, which is a Kohen, born from a forbidden Kohen union. He's actually not really a Kohen. He loses the Kohen status. So he's fourth. The Chalal li-Shtuki. A Chalal comes before a Shtuki. Shtuki is a person whose father's identity is not known. Ushtuki la-Asufi. The Shtuki comes before the Asufi. The Asufi is somebody whose neither parent's identity is known. We're not even sure in a way that he's Jewish. The Asufi, the Mamzer, yet an Asufi comes before an illegitimate Jew, a Jew born out of a forbidden union that took place between two other Jews. Mamzer le-Nasin, a Mamzer comes before a Nasin from the Gibeonite nations, who joined the Jewish people under pretty fishy circumstances. They were always treated as second class among the Jewish people. The Nasin leger, a Nasin comes before a convert. Shah Nasin gadol imanu b'kedusha, because at least the Nasin grew up in holiness with us. The ger kaidem le'eved meshuchrar lefishahaya b'chal order. And the ger, the convert, comes before a freed slave, who also has the full status of a full-fledged Jew, because the ger was included in the prohibition, or in the curses, which the Jews were placed under just before they entered the land of Israel, in which they were adjured to keep the Torah and its mitzvahs, lest they be cursed if not. And the gerim were included in that. Towards the very end of the Torah, it says, "Atem tzavim hayom kulchem," all of you are here, and one of the people on the list is v'gercha asher b'sharecha, the converts. So in that way, they're on a higher status than the Eved Meshucher. So that's the way it goes. If you only have enough, you first find the Kohanes and the Levites and the Israelites, etc. When do we say that? If both people in question were equal in their Torah wisdom, and it was simply a genealogical question of who comes first. But if there was a Kohen Gadol, not just a regular Kohen, the high priest, but he was an ignoramus. Unfortunately, as it was in the end of the Second Temple times, the Kohen Gadol job kind of went to the highest bidder. It was a very sad time. A lot of politics involved in it. And there was times when the Kohen Gadol was a simple ignoramus. And there's a mamzer, an illegitimate Jew, born from a forbidden union, but he's a Talmid Chacham, Torah sage, Talmid Chacham kaidem. The Torah sage comes first. Talmud talks about this. There's a verse that says, Yikara himi pninim. Torah is more precious than jewels. But the word pninim can also be read as pnim, inside. Torah is more precious than he who goes all the way inside into the Holy of Holies. We value the Torah value higher than the Kohen Gadol, and we'll redeem the Talmid Chacham first. Anyone greater in wisdom precedes his friend to be redeemed. But if one of them was the master or the father, the teacher, the primary teacher, or the father of the person who's giving the funds, even if there's a greater person in wisdom than them, Rabbi or Aviv, Shel Talmid Chacham, the person's own teacher or father who is at least somewhat of a Torah sage, precedes the person, even if he's greater in wisdom, but this guy's got two things going for him. He's first of all great in wisdom, plus he's a teacher or a father of the person that's redeeming. And therefore, that takes precedence and you redeem him first.